Today's guest played an important role in the success of Illinois State athletics during the 1980s. From 1983 to 1990, Pat Gregory served as the Redbird strength and conditioning coach, helping student athletes prepare for competition through hard work, discipline, and a commitment to excellence. Coach Gregory worked with athletes across multiple sports, building training programs that challenged them to be stronger, faster, and mentally tougher. While fans saw the games on the field and the court, much of the work that made those performances possible happened in the weight room, where Coach Gregory helped shape countless Redbird athletes. Today we're looking back on that era, hearing stories from behind the scenes and learning more about the people, the teams, and the experiences that made those years so memorable. Please welcome former Illinois State strength and conditioning coach Pat Gregory to Bird Fans Forever.
Hello and welcome to Bird Fans Forever, episode 86 with my coach, Coach Pat Gregory. He was my strength and conditioning coach when I was at Illinois State, and he is here to join us today. Hey, Coach, thank you for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me, John. It's a real honor.
All right, so we're going to ask you the same question we ask everybody their first time on. How did you get to ISU?
So, in 1980, I was a senior at Hillsdale College in Hillsdale, Michigan. I was there on a football scholarship. I was able to captain the team and was heavily into weight training, football. And so I stayed on in 81 and I was a graduate assistant at Hillsdale, helped coach and helped do the weight program there. And then when 1982 came, my wife was also at Hillsdale. She graduated, I graduated, and I was very interested in training athletes. And this was 1982, so this was early. And so there was an organization at the time called the National Strength Conditioning Association. It was in its infancy. And I wrote them, and I said, hey, man, what's it take to be a strength coach? And they wrote me back and said, right now, I mean, they didn't have any hard and fast criteria because they were just getting off the ground. But, they said that most strength coaches had a master's degree in physiology or exercise science or thereabouts. And so I talked to my AD at Hillsdale and I said, hey, man, I want to be a strength coach. And so we talked and said, it sounds like I'm going to need a master's degree. And so we started looking. I started looking for graduate assistantships, and I looked at Ohio University, I looked at University of Wisconsin La Crosse, and I looked at Illinois State University. I made application to them, to their graduate programs, and I was accepted to all three. I visited all three. ISU being the last one, Nancy and I both went because we were going to get married that summer. And when I left ISU, I said to Nancy, she said, what do you think? I said, you know what? This place has the most job potential. Because the other schools, the strength coaches were just graduate assistants. It wasn't a full-time job. They only worked with football. You were GA. But Illinois State, there was something about it, and this was back in 1982, where I thought they were ripe for organized training. Where they were willing to make the financial commitment, investment to get a full-time strength coach in there to train all the teams. Because I know at the time Bob Donewall was interested in that. I had talked to him. And so for 2 years I did, I'll say, good work for football. I mean, we had amazing results. And we had organized training for the first time. I mean, really, it wasn't just guys going in the weight room. It was organized programs based on science, conditioning programs. And so all that said, the interest in coming in a strength coach, applying to graduate school, 1982. Nancy and I got married in July. 2 weeks later, I was at football camp at ISU. And during ISU, I mean, they brought me in, and I worked football only for 2 years. I was an offensive line coach. I was a GA, but I worked with Bob Hefner. He worked with centers and guards. I worked with tight ends and tackles, and then I did all the weights and the conditioning. And during those 2 years, everybody else got to see that. Everybody else being basketball, wrestling, everybody got to see it. And so that was 1982 to 84. I did football.
So when did I?
So she had 2 votes for which place you went to, and you had 1. So it was 3-0 then for ISU?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you real good, Steve.
So when you consulted with her after you went and you said all those great things about ISU and the potential, she still had 2 votes, right? And so did she cast both her votes for ISU too?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, she did. And hey, 44 years this Friday, we're still here, and she's still with me, man. You know, so yeah, so whatever I did worked.
It worked.
So, talk about how you went from, how did ISU approach you about going from strength and conditioning for football then to strength and conditioning for all the athletic teams?
Yeah, I mean, during my time with football, I was very organized with our programs. I mean, everything was based on science, man. I mean, I was involved in classes-wise, I was involved in biomechanics, kinesiology, and all that means, hey, man, we were studying the human body, we were studying movement, you know, we were studying sports, and there was a term at the time called sports specificity, meaning, okay, what's it take to train a football athlete? What's it take to train a basketball athlete? So I did all that with football. We had real good results. Our team was through the roof, strong, fit, in shape, and they were balanced programs, man. We had stretching programs, we had conditioning programs. You know, at the end of the day, when those athletes came in, end of July, they better be in shape. You know, and even when they came in, we did testing. Okay, so
Right.
To answer your question, John, all the other coaches saw that.
Okay.
And Donowald saw that, Joe Hutchison saw that, Sandy Lynn saw that, all the other coaches saw that, and they go, I want that. I want that same organized training for my sport.
Yeah, because when I signed with Illinois State and FedEx that national letter of intent, and I always complain about that, right? NIL versus NLI. Could have picked different letters, right? But the next day shows up the Pat Gregory or Coach Gregory strength and conditioning manual that had William and Derek and all these guys doing all the different lifts, right? And this is what I was supposed to start doing on November 14th. Even though I was in season for high school, they wanted me to be getting into the weight room once or twice a week during the season and then after the season. And that's the thing you put together, right? We talked about that at lunch on Friday.
Well, sure, you know, I mean, that was my job, you know, and I did do that. I put that together. I mean, if I just counted you guys, forgive me, but if I just count on you guys to show up day one, be in shape, you know, I mean, come on, man. I know, look at, you're laughing, I get it, but, you know, Donowald wouldn't be laughing. I'd be in his office going, hey, man, why aren't these guys in shape? But here's the thing, you know, a lot of high school athletes, I had the plethora of different high school athletes. I had highly organized high schools that had very good training, and their athletes were used to training, all the way to high schools that did nothing. And this was back. So here's the thing with basketball. You know, hey man, this was back in 1982, and there were still schools that thought, you know, we shouldn't. Basketball players do weights? No way. Come on, man. You're gonna mess up their shot. You know, we were fighting a lot of stigmas like that back in the day, and so, but Donowald, I'll speak to him because he was the one that kind of I came in under. I mean, we had a very good understanding. I was just like Zwart. I was like AJ. I was like Pat Cunningham. I was part of the staff. I had a piece to do, and the good news was, you know, I trained a lot myself back then. I mean, I was seriously trained at the time, and so I mean,
let me interrupt and talk
Right.
about that, right? Because you used to run with us, right? So here is practice started for us, and the preseason started at 2:30. We were on the track with John Coughlin doing our running, cleaning up our strides, and then at 3 o'clock we got turned over to you.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And
I don't
you
want to.
had already- what I didn't know is that you had already run with the volleyball team and
Yeah.
the women's basketball team, and
Yeah, I don't
We'll
want to
talk
hurt
about
you
that.
guys. I don't want to hurt your feelings, but you guys were like easy to run with, man. I mean, you guys are like running with a bunch of old women. I mean, seriously. I mean, hey, when I ran with volleyball, I mean, I had to run. The only team I really couldn't run with was the soccer team. You couldn't run with those guys; they'd kill you. Now I didn't run with track and all that because they did their kind of their own training. But the point was, I was fit enough and I wanted to manage the programs enough to where I went with you guys because
Absolutely.
you needed help and encouragement when you ran. The other thing was, I'm not 6'10", but I played offensive tackle, so I used to be one of you guys. I used to be a big guy.
right.
And when I first came to ISU, I got plugged into the physiology lab, and we had a guy. His name was Bill, I'll say, and he was a 4-minute miler from Kansas State. And he was a physiology student. I was a physiology student, and I was heavily endowed in weight training, and he was heavily endowed in running. And we made a pact, and I said, "Here's the thing: I'll teach you to lift weights if you teach me to run." And so we started run together, man. And that guy helped me run a lot. And by the time you guys got there, I was in serious shape where I could help you guys. I wanted to get out and help you because I didn't have to help those guys that were up front. It was you guys that were in the back, as you and Bradsick and DeCrane and you guys that had the big shoes and
So we would take off and run out
Gregory.
and run up Gregory, right? Run on Adelaide, run out to Gregory to the corner and back 3 miles. And then halfway through the 6 weeks of preseason, it become a 4-mile run. We just add in another mile out there, a loop around Donald's house, basically. You got to tell the story of the first time. So I'm running with Bill Bradsick, Jay Teagle, 6'11" from Indiana. He doesn't make it. Kevin DeCrane, 6'10" from South Bend. He won't make it. Sonny is 9 miles down the path. I mean, he's already finished the path when we're just getting started. And so Coach Gregory would be running, and since we were going out down Gregory and back, he could stop. He'd loop in and run a little bit with Jeff and Matt, and then or Sam or whoever, and then he'd loop back and catch us. Well, he turns the corner, and guess what he sees?
My biggest fear, truly, you guys always talked about how scared you were to go into Donald's office. My biggest fear is he was going to be driving down Gregory and seeing you guys walking. You knuckleheads. If he saw you walking, I was toast. I'd have been in that office Monday morning and he, how's things going? And I'd say, yeah, they're going good. He says, well, I saw Bradsick and Pemberton walking Monday. It's like, how do you explain that?
Bill said we could walk. He was a senior. I was a freshman. Okay, we can walk. Coach
Remember that
Gregory,
you were a soccer player in high school, so you should have been one of those guys that should have been able to run the whole thing.
Steve, our soccer players would have killed me. I mean, even as fit as I was, they were super fit. I'd never run with them. I might have ran with them a couple times, but never to. I didn't have to babysit them like
so
John.
he loops back around. He sees us walking, just yells it. Chews us out all the way back to Horton. Get to Horton, he's like, we're going to run this again. Let's go. 3 more miles out. I learned my lesson that day. Don't listen to Crane. Don't listen to Teagle. Don't listen to Bradsick. Run. Just get away from those idiots and run. And I love those 3 dudes, right? I mean, good friends with them still to the day. But,
on a serious note, what I talked about with the coaches was we needed to get to the point where conditioning wasn't a factor.
agreed.
Where you were going to be in shape. Like that shouldn't even be a thing. So if you guys are out and you're getting into your season and you're a couple games down the road and you're having a problem running the floor, that's my fault. And that shouldn't happen. That because you have time to plan, you have time to condition. So my sell to the head coaches were always, hey man, they're going to be in shape, and we just set that expectation. And so as a player, it was just, that's the way it was. You're going to be in shape and you're going to put the work in. And if you didn't, the great news about the program John was in, I didn't have to babysit. If they weren't applying themselves, coach dealt with it. I didn't have to deal with any of that, So.
And I would say after my freshman year, right, because I didn't understand as a freshman what I was getting into. But after about the week of practice, I realized that weight room had to become my best friend, or I should just quit now, right?
Sure.
Because I was getting destroyed by Derek Sanders. I was getting destroyed. And then going through the league with massive Mike Williams from Bradley and Xavier McDaniels and all those giants and Benoit Benjamin and all those giants of human beings just destroyed me. In fact, we just posted up my freshman year playing against Wichita State and Sasha Radunovich, and I'm just getting thrown around like a rag doll, right?
Yeah.
So
I told John at lunch on Friday that I really basketball was an eye opener for me.
Talk about that, the pads and all that stuff. Yeah.
I came from a football background. It was physical. We hurt each other. We got hurt. But I wasn't ready to when I went and saw the level of physical play that ISU men's basketball was playing at. I mean, I show up to practice, and they've got thigh boards on. They got mouthpieces in. I'm like, what is this? I thought this was a finesse game where they're, shooting and run the court and all that. But, they were so physical inside that I learned quickly they needed a weight room. And not only that, because of the level we were, they would give me these skinny guys. Now, John wasn't, forgive me, John wasn't.
I was 218.
Oh, come on.
I was 218.
You were
6'8", 218. I had never lifted I was a swimmer, never lifted a weight in my life.
Right. But to the point, I mean, I got guys like that they needed to muscle up. If they were going to get in that lane and be able to mix it up with some of these big guys, hey, man, we needed to put some weight on them. They needed some hip strength. They needed some leg strength. They needed some upper body strength. I mean, it's a doggone physical game, and that was an eye-opener for me. So, those big guys, we really did start training them a little bit more aggressively like football players just because of the physicality of that game.
So, Coach, you mentioned that basketball coaches in the early and mid '80s would say stuff like, "Hey, that's going to ruin their shot. They lift weights and stuff like that. They shouldn't bench press." Like I remember, my high school basketball coach. Oh, you could do squats, but you couldn't bench press. And then my football coach was always at odds. So how did you overcome that, right? And I know you were doing conditioning, but you had 20 different coaches that you had to sell this new idea, perhaps, of how do you train. And then women's sports was completely different back then, right?
Sure.
And you had a whole nother mindset that they shouldn't be doing weightlifting at all in some cases. So how did you break those barriers?
Well, so part of it was my journey there, Steve, was, I was going through physiology training. I was going through kinesiology classes. I was going through exercise science classes, and I was learning the science of training. And this was at a time when this was early, man. I mean, like right now today, it's all science. I mean, it's all science-based and all that, but these were the early years. And so the good news for me and the good news for ISU and the good news for the teams was I was going through this training at the same time I was training people. So I was learning the science really behind all of this. And so, I'm going to go back to that term that we used earlier, sports specificity, that whole concept was, look at the sport, analyze the sport, what do they need for strength? What do they need for flexibility? What do they need for conditioning? Is it an endurance sport? Is it a speed sport? Do they need power and all that? And so, again, the good news for me, the good news for ISU, the good news for the teams was I was in the throes of all that training and education when right before I did this. And so when they hired me, I had all those concepts, and it was really state of the art back then. The only teams that back in the 80s, because I visited a lot of strength coaches, both at the collegiate level and at the professional level, the only teams back then that really had full-time strength coaches were big D1 schools. That was it, man. Because there weren't a lot of them. So we would analyze a team. Like I introduced plyometrics to basketball for the first time, and they got to do plyos, man, and we had a lot of teams. The other thing I did is I paid attention to our track teams. Track and field is like the sport of training that you compete in. I mean, the training is what they do for a sport, and so I paid a lot of attention to what they did, and not just the runners, but like the shot putters, the discus people, the javelin people. I mean, they did power training. They did, and so for the teams, I'll say the male teams, whether it was wrestling or basketball, we broke down what their needs were, and we built programs around that, and that was the core program. Now, you also had to look at positions, like a guard versus maybe John. There were some different things that they had to do. I mean, some different expectations, but when I took over as strength coach, I had 20 teams and 500 athletes, and I was by myself. Now, that's a balancing act, I'm going to tell you, man. I told John, when I left that arena and went to State Farm and worked at State Farm, I worked in program development. Nothing scared me after ISU, man. I mean, you talk about a juggling act. But I got to learn how to manage a lot. Like, I had a lot of teams, I had a lot of athletes, and in the beginning, I had 2 facilities. This predates Redbird Arena. I mean, I had a free weight room in Horton Fieldhouse, and I had a Nautilus room I shared with 2 other departments. And so it was a balancing act and a juggling act for 20 sports, 2 facilities, and I was busy. And all of those teams had the same requirements. I looked at them, whether they were a male team, a female team, whether they were in season or off season. That was another one that I brought to the table, was in season training. A lot of coaches like they were like, yeah, okay, we'll train the off season, but then you go in season and they're like, no, we're not doing anything. I'm like, what do you mean? You got to maintain those levels of strength and all that, and so I was really the one that brought in-season training, and they used to train. You can ask John. They used to train during the week. It was a lot. It was reduced. So in the beginning, it was just me, but then toward the end, I was there. I was full-time from 84 to 89, and about the last 3 years, they gave me 3 graduate assistants, and that was my staff. I had, and they were students that were training just like I was. They were going through the physiology training and all that. And, I was able to kind of replicate myself with other sports. I always handled the big 4. I handled the 2 basketballs, football and volleyball, and then they handled kind of everybody else. So, but it was all based on science. And that was early, back in the 1980s.
So what would you do? You talked about, you had bigs, and you realized they had to be physical. So you want to do strength, like you perhaps like did some stuff in football, so there might be a little bit overlap. But like, what did you do with the basketball team that was different than the football team? Or even within football, you had position players, right, versus the linemen, and because it was all new back then, right?
Yeah,
You got 100 football players walking through at one time, or was it broken up, or how did you guys do that?
Well, to maybe start with football, there were certain things that everybody did, right? I mean, there were certain things everybody
Box
did.
jumps.
Yeah, and so, but like for example, for offensive linemen, they needed more. Back then there was a lot more pushing and extending the arms and all that. So like the bench press and the incline press, that became real important. The other thing that I would do, like with football, is we would do actually what they consider Olympic lifts, which were like cleans and jerks and presses. Those were very technical lifts, actually pretty dangerous lifts, but there's no better lift for power, okay? Power being strength plus speed. And so, but football needed that. Now, basketball needed that too, but I had to kind of weigh, to put a basketball player under some lifts like that could be dangerous. Because obviously the last thing I wanted to do is get somebody hurt. Now, the track people, like the shot putters, the discus throwers, they were doing snatch and cleans and jerks, and that was all amazing power training. It's just I had to, basketball needed power, but I had to get it somewhere else, and they didn't need a lot of weight to do that. So maybe to give you a specific answer, Steve, like with football, I'd probably do that with weights, the power training, but with basketball, I'd do it with plyometrics. I'd do it with like jump boxes. We used to have these jump boxes, and man, we had these
24, 36, and 44s. We hated them.
That 36, man, I tell you, I was like, when I was building those, I had a guy build me those boxes, and I'm like, should I build one 36? Can anybody do that? Randy Blair and Todd Starks about jumped over the doggone things. I mean, they were like high jumpers.
Sonny could too. Sonny could literally stand there and jump over the damn box. I'd be like,
right.
Get out of here. Right? I'd be like,
But so with basketball, I would use jump boxes and plyometrics to get power instead of like heavy weights. So I didn't want to bulk these guys up a lot, because they just didn't need the extra weight to run the court. So it was this balance of some strength and some cardio and some speed and some agility. They also had to have agility. So all of that was balanced within their strength training program, their conditioning program. There was a balance to that. And that varied from sport to sport.
and that was in the whole. And Coach, I looked for that box all weekend. I just saw it a month ago. I still have that training.
Oh, with William?
I can't find it.
Yeah.
I don't know where I put it. I put it somewhere safe, and it's so safe I still can't find it again. But yeah.
So
Yeah.
Coach, you mentioned the big staff of one that expanded to 4 with 3 grad assistants. If we were talking modern day, okay, and someone had 20 teams, how many people on staff do you think there are, or now on a mid-major like ISU?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't been back to ISU to know that, but I would say you take like a Big 12 team or Big 10 team, probably 6 to 8 people.
10 at ISU, Coach. Each one has 2 teams. There's 20 teams.
Yeah.
So, right?
Well, and hey, sports today is so scientific.
Yeah.
Data, everything's a game of inches, and so training has become that way too. And and now we have so many people in the field that are trained to do this. It was tough to find a trained strength coach back in the day, but I don't know. Hey, for 20 teams, it'd be nice if each team had 2. Had 2 coaches to go with it. I'll be honest with you, Steve, back in the day, what I had, is I had some coaches that helped me. So like when I was by myself, heck, Mark Zwart and AJ and they worked out. You know, they weren't too far removed from their playing days. I had even with like Sandy Lynn and Julie Morgan with volleyball. I mean, man, they were fit. They would work out with the teams.
Robinson, Luann Robinson's older sister, who was an All-American, she would work out. I chatted with her. She would work out with the team, and she was an assistant coach for Jill. So yeah, let's roll into Jill's stuff and talk about it, right? So we got Jill that has now just basically started, a Title IX, got women playing sports, and now, listen, we just had Ellen McGrew on, and she talked about her training with you.
Yeah.
So talk about, was Jill open to just like everything? Well, let's just try it.
Absolutely. Every women's coach was. I mean, I can't think of one that wasn't on it, John. I mean, they were they
progressive.
They were
right?
They expected it. They expected their athletes to do it. You know, you got to keep in mind too that a lot of these sports and these coaches, the year before I got there, they were training their people by themselves, and so these people were used to train their own people. So I did get some good help from the staffs, but like I think of this goes way back, like to Margie Wright when she coached softball, and then Melinda Fisher after her. The expectation was, man, it was no different than Donowald's. It was like,
right.
You're going to get in shape. Matter of fact, forgive me, but some of those women's sports, they'd hit the pub a little bit and maybe get out of shape during the summer. And let me tell you, their coaches were on them about staying in shape, about keeping your weight down and all that. So they weren't really much different than you guys were because, hey, they still had the same propensities. I mean, some of them came from small schools and didn't train at all. Some of them were still trying to figure out what's it take to compete at a D1 level.
I think every athlete goes through that, right?
And some of these kids were the top athletes in their whole school, and now they're on a team where they're probably toward the bottom. And so, honestly, training was one way that you could make up ground on that.
Yeah.
I think the kids really realized, the athletes realized that if they applied themselves in training, that they could really make a marked increase in their athletic abilities. It happened to me as an athlete. The weight room made it for me, and I saw it in a lot of the athletes I coached at Illinois State, and I'll say the smart ones did use it to their advantage. They did apply themselves, and no, you're a great example, John. I mean, honestly, you could have gone the other direction. Some guys did, some guys just never bought into it,
Right.
But and I think you're a testimony of, hey, man, when you had your tryouts and all that, makes a difference, right? I mean, at that level, they're all beasts, And so I didn't have a lot of problem with the women's sports applying themselves, and the coaches just expected it. They gave me support. My bigger issues were scheduling facilities and stuff like that because, man, when you got two, Redbird Arena helped a lot. Okay, Redbird Arena helped me a lot. But prior to that, when you've got 2 weight rooms and 20 sports, do the math. It's tough.
Well, and talk about, so men's basketball, right? At the time, we were making all the money. We were sold out all the time, playing on TV all the time. Talk about going to Donowald and building a mobile weight room that all the sports could take advantage of, which really gave us a third weight room, right? In the time. So talk about that process.
Honestly, I think that's a heck of a story, and it's not because it was my brainchild. It was because, so we were in transition. I mean, we were growing. More sports were really coming on board and training hard, and I just had this scheduling conundrum, right? 2 weight rooms, 20 teams. And so we were going into the arena. The arena wasn't coming fast enough. They had to build it yet. But I had this idea. Nautilus just came out with this new equipment. It was free weight equipment, but it was Nautilus. You loaded free weights on. It was amazing equipment. And I had this idea. You know, you used to go up to practice there in Horton Fieldhouse, and all the way around the fieldhouse, of course, that was a track and field facility too, but they had all this kind of rubberized AstroTurf type stuff, and there was room for these weight units. And so my plan was I was going to buy. I went to Donald and I said, hey, I need some money, and I got this idea. and I said, hey, this is going to benefit you directly, because you know, if I went to the athletic department, you know, now you got a lot of people involved. Donald had the money to fund it, and I said, Coach, and by the way, this equipment's going in Redbird Arena someday. But so what we did is we bought 8 pieces of Nautilus equipment, and then I had a contractor in town, and he built me these platforms. They're huge. They're big 2x4 stud platforms. They framed them up and put carpeting on them, and we put casters, wheels under them, and they had locks on the perimeter, and these things were mobile. It was crazy. It was
right
really
into practice.
Cool. It became a bit of a pain, like probably where I undersold it was to the facility staff. I'm like, oh, it'll be no big deal. You know, we'll just have to move these things a couple times. Oh, man, it was a nightmare. Because when they had a game, like they had to move them and, you know, but they were good soldiers, man. God bless them, because they moved this equipment around. But here's the point. When men's basketball, so Donald bought it. He funded the whole thing, bought into my concept. And when they had weights in season on John's team, what we would do is before that practice, we would move these weight units around the practice, and it became part of their practice. Like Donald Wall's practice was so enclosed and so tight that I wanted this training experience to be part of that. And so, you know, they'd hit the whistle, they'd shoot their free throws, and then the weights were just another station in their practice. And so on the days that they were going to do their in-season training, me and my guys, we'd push these things on the court, we'd lock down the casters, and they'd blow the whistle, and these guys would get on, and they'd do their weights right part of their practice, and that's
so half of us would
solved
be
a scheduling problem for me.
Half of us would be on the court doing whatever drill work you were doing, right? The littles and then us bigs.
Yeah.
And then, so if the littles were doing, call them the guards.
Right.
We call them littles, but the littles would do them, and we'd be hitting the weights. We'd run through all 8 stations. There was actually 9. There was a platform for like barbell curls and that stuff. So we'd hit all 9, right, and you'd move, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Then when you were done, they would hop on, and now you're doing skill work. We'd do a quick stretch, and then you're doing your skill work, and so that's how that worked during practice. I kind of thought it was really cool, right? But ultimately, I heard other athletes say, "Oh, it's so cool that the athletic department bought this whole setup," and it really was Coach Donald.
Well, see, and you guys, John, you were a model. I kind of figured if I
was
could
a model.
Well, let me finish. No, you guys were kind of a model. I knew if I could get you guys to use it and work out on it, other teams would see that. Like for example, football would be coming in, they'd cutting through the field house, and all of a sudden they're seeing you doing weights, and they're going, what are they doing? And so what it became is during that transition, when we still were in Horton Fieldhouse, I had football doing their in-season programs on that equipment. I had baseball. Jeff Stewart came on board, and he's like, man, I want my guys on that. And so women's basketball used it, volleyball used it, and so it became a really slick way to do your in-season training. And then once the arena came around, we took them off the platforms, we put them permanently in the facility, and I had my equipment. You know, I had 8 pieces, good piece of equipment, and you guys were used to using it.
Can I stop it?
When we talk about, right?
Hey, John. Wait. Put that down for a second.
Okay.
Wait, walk back to that picture back there.
That one right
One
there.
right next to bird pin. Yeah, walk back to that one and bring that over here.
I got it velcroed onto the wall. Hold on.
All right. All right, you guys getting this shot?
Yeah.
All right.
You're terrible.
Pemberton, we want to make sure this makes the video. Okay, go ahead, kill it. You won't skip. All right, John, put that picture right now. We're recording. We're going live.
Okay, we're going live.
Okay. Do you look like that right now?
Oh, heck no.
All right. Okay, I just wanted to...
I was training with Coach Greg. That's the year I broke my foot. So this is my red shirt. This is my senior year, not my red shirt senior year. So I am 21 years old here. Coach Gregory is still my strength and conditioning coach. I'm on a broken foot right there. In fact, the next possession, Bradley will break my foot in my junior or my redshirt senior or my first senior year will be over, right? So sadly, this young man doesn't realize that he's going for surgery in the next 6 minutes in Broman, right? And so, and we're going to have Kathy Schneedwin on next, Coach Gregory.
Okay.
And so Kathy will see me. She'll have to come out of the stands and get in the ambulance with me and take me over to Broman. So,
Yeah.
but, and Steve, I'll put a side-by-side picture of me as a freshman. That is all Coach Gregory's doing, right? And I went and looked up my numbers.
Well, hold on, John. Before you can give the numbers at the end. Okay, we're going to do a little true and false with Coach Gregory.
Okay.
Okay. Ready?
Ready.
Coach, you answer however you feel fit.
Okay.
So, John has claimed numerous times on the podcast that he holds he's second in bench pressing. Is that true or false for basketball players?
That's true.
That's true. So first was Rick Lamb?
Yeah, probably. Rick was a little bit before my time, Steve, but I heard that his bench press exceeded John's. I knew what John's is. I mean, in my time, John had our best bench press.
Yeah, John says his was 998 pounds. Is that true or false?
That's false.
That's false. Okay.
That might have been his combined. That was probably his calorie count at breakfast.
Okay, true or false? John used to squat 2 cheerleaders on both sides of the barbells. True or false?
Wow.
I don't know where you got these true and false questions.
Yeah,
How simple is it, true or false?
Yeah.
I think it's probably true, right?
I would like to see that, Steve. You know, John could squat a lot. I mean, I don't know if you've seen his hips. He was a good squatter. 2 cheerleaders, that'd probably be about, if they were like 250 apiece, he could have squatted them.
Okay, all right. And then
That's a big cheerleader.
That's a big cheerleader. Yeah.
John came in at 218, right?
Yeah.
And he ended at, I wrote down 254, but I don't know if it's 245.
255, yeah, 254 or something like that.
Yeah.
True, right? Muscle?
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Okay. Last question, true or false? John Pemberton was the best ball screener because you developed his hips and his ass to set those screens.
All the work that I just provided the program and the guidance. John did the work, so I'm going to let him claim that one. But I probably had a little influence on him.
Huge influence. Huge.
Well, but here's maybe the reality of that is John had a very good muscle frame, better than a lot of for the inside, for playing the inside, and a lot of the weight that he carried by doing the leg work, the squats, and all that. I mean, man, he picked up some weight in his quads and his hips, and those things were deadly inside. I mean, you could move. I never realized that. I go back to my ignorance when I first started, but man, when you see those guys, one thing I noticed was how significant a thigh bruise was in basketball, and I'm thinking, how are they getting these thigh bruises? And when you see them, I mean, man, they'd throw those hips around. Holy smokes! I mean, they could level people,
Right.
and that's why they needed weight to go in there. But the weight that John picked up was muscle. I mean, he applied himself. I plead the fifth on the whole squatting the cheerleader thing. But other than that, he did put on muscle under my guidance.
And you know what? All of us did, right? I was very blessed to play with 5 seniors who bought into that lifting and training and making sure you were ready for the season. And that's why we won a championship, right? Because Sonny, Gerard, Ricky, Randy, Sam, Todd Cagle, right? Xavier, Elvin, we all bought into that. And that's this picture here, Coach, that is one of the few pictures we have of Coach. Even the athletic director department doesn't have that. That is Coach Gregory with us preseason, my senior year. So the year I break my foot. And so, and I'll put a digital copy up. I still have the original. My teammates share that at least once a year. We'll all get tagged in that by somebody. Will look at that and just rave about it, right? And so every one of them was putting on muscle and strength, right?
Well, yeah, and the other goodness was in the weight room, and this is one of those unspoken things. There was a lot of leadership developed in the weight room. We had people that would go in there and take over. There was a lot of team camaraderie. It was a good place to work out and work with people that didn't want to work hard. Because, I didn't have to worry about these guys. They would get on people that didn't want to apply themselves. And so it was a good place for all that. And, it's kind of like a team working out their soul where they're in a weight room and they're working together. And if somebody's not carrying their weight, man, that's an issue. And they would get on each other about that. And that was a good thing.
Good thing.
Coach, you worked for State Farm, right?
I did.
Yeah. Did you ever get Pemberton on camera and drop down and give me 10? Just bark that out at him every once in a while if he didn't service you right?
Yeah, I'll tell you, Steve. Now, when I first saw John, because we were both in infrastructure. When I first saw John, I'm like, Pemberton? I was like, what? And I thought maybe we should go for a run. And then I saw him on the bike trail, and I'm like, nah.
We pass each other on the bike trail once every couple of weeks, or I'll spin around and catch up to Coach and start riding with him, and so we see each other on Constitution Trail all the time, and so yeah. And so, Steve, earlier in the podcast, you kind of dogged me on my times and how much I had lifted and that stuff. So my first 3-mile run time, where I walked, right, was had it written down on my sheet. I can't find the program, but I have all my sheets that Coach would make us fill out, and we'd have to mail in. And so I took those when Donald got fired. I grabbed those. My first 3-mile run time was 27 minutes and 3 seconds. So I ran a 9:01 mile time for 27.3. Under Coach Gregory's supervision and training and all that stuff, I followed that. Even during the summers, I followed it to a T, because I knew if I didn't come back ready to go, in shape, I was going to die in preseason and then die during the season. It was just going to be horrible. My last 3-mile time, my senior year before I break my foot, is 17:03. I ran a 5:41 mile time for 3 straight miles. That's
pretty good for a big guy.
That's
6'10", 255.
really good.
My freshman year, I got on the bench press. Now, I was supposed to lift going into my freshman year, and I got up and I got yelled at again. I had no idea what I was in for. No idea. 2 45s and a 45 bar. That was the expectation, that everybody could do 1 set of 10 of those. I did 2. 2. That was it. That's all I could do. I couldn't do 3. I couldn't do 4, and got yelled at. My senior year, right? My senior year, after Coach had gone to State Farm, I did 3. I went to that lifting competition where I kind of actually did train and lifted for it. I did 355 three times, 350 three times, 355 three times, 360 three times, 365 three times, 370 twice. Him and I talked about this. Had he still been there and gone with me, he would have been like, "You're not starting at 350. You're starting at 365," because I just burned myself out. I didn't have the ability to go 16 reps at that much weight, right? Which is just phenomenal, right, at my size. I think my max is probably higher than 375, but I never tried anything higher than that, right? Bender did not want me going. He's like, "Listen, when I got back, said I did 370. He said, that's your max for the season. I want you just to keep doing 370. All right, Coach. In honor of my daughter, who's a public defender, I call this closing, so the floor is yours."
Yeah, I mean, hey, thanks for having me here. This has been a little bit of an emotional thing for me just because this was a time in my life that was a really good, important time in my life. I got to work with a lot of amazing people, and I've kept a lot of friendships, and that's been the sweet part of it. I had a good run. I hated to leave. The circumstances that caused me to leave were family, and so, it's family first. But, man, the friendships that I formed throughout all this, I see people, and seriously, like John, I see athletes that still stay in touch with me, that maybe have kids now, and we can always laugh and talk about the good times and all that. But, I was very blessed with athletes that worked for it. I mean, these guys, these ladies, they put the time in, they wanted to succeed, and it made me better. It made me better. Keep in mind, I was a young strength coach at the time, and I had successful teams because we applied ourselves, but it made me better as a strength coach, and I always appreciated that. And it wasn't, the interesting thing is I wasn't that much older than these guys. I'm really not. I mean, I was just a couple, years ahead of them, and it was just a pleasure to work with them. I mean, I loved it going to work every day. I mean, I got to go out and run with a basketball team, or I got to go lift with a football team, and man, I had a dream job, and it was awesome. And so, thank you to all you Redbirds. You really made an important part of my life better. My family still remembers you. My wife Nancy does. And that was an important time of life, and you guys really made it better for me. So thank you for that.
No, thank you, Coach. Right? I mean, I got to a championship. My team got there because of the guidance and help you gave us, and
yeah,
right, and that. So, thank you. Right.
Yeah.
All right. So this has been awesome. Glad John and Steve could laugh at my expense, but this is Bird Fans Forever, episode 86 with Coach Pat Gregory. Thank you, and hit it, John. We got the clip.